Okay, so picture this. You are sitting across from someone, maybe at a party, maybe in an interview, maybe just meeting a neighbor for the first time, and they ask you something so simple it almost feels rude that your brain suddenly goes blank. Not a hard question, not grammar, just, so, what do you do? And somehow your mind just closes like a shop at midnight.
That happened to me last month, and it was not even a stranger. It was someone I had met 3 times already.
See, that is exactly the kind of moment we are talking about today, because there are certain questions, maybe around 30 of them, that come up again and again in real English conversations. And if you cannot answer them smoothly, every single conversation feels like a test.
So today, we're going to fix that together with a real story, not just a list.
Welcome back to Rose and Jack Every Day. We're so happy you're here. I hope yesterday's episode helped you feel a little more confident. Today is day 28 of our 30-day B1 to B2 challenge, and today's topic is 30 questions every B1 learner should answer in English. By the end of today's episode, you will not just know these questions, you will actually feel ready to answer them naturally, the way people really talk.
And trust me, once you hear our story today, you will recognize this exact situation from your own life. So let me start, because this is honestly still a little embarrassing for me. About 2 years ago, I decided to join a language exchange meetup here in the city. I told myself this was a great idea: meet new people, practice speaking, build confidence. In my head, I imagined easy, flowing conversations. What I did not expect was that almost every single person who talked to me asked the exact same 5 or 6 questions in the first 2 minutes.
Let me guess. Where are you from? What do you do? How long have you lived here?
Exactly those. And also, do you have any hobbies? What do you like to do on weekends? And my personal least favorite, so tell me a little about yourself. That last one always got me. It sounds so open and friendly, but honestly, in the moment, it felt enormous. Like someone handed me a blank page and said, write your whole life story right now, in English, in front of strangers.
I actually love that you say that because I think a lot of learners feel exactly the same pressure. It's strange. These questions look so simple on paper, but they carry so much weight the first time someone actually asks you directly.
Right. And the first time it happened, a woman at the meetup asked me, so, what do you do for work? And I panicked. Not because I didn't understand the question, I understood it perfectly, but because I had never practiced saying my own job title and my daily tasks out loud in English before. So instead of a smooth answer, I said something like, I do, computer. I fix computer problems for company. And she was lovely, she smiled and nodded, but inside, I felt like I had failed a test I didn't even know I was taking.
That's such an honest thing to admit, and I think it connects perfectly to my own story because mine happened in a completely different setting, a job interview, but the feeling was almost identical.
Oh, tell me, because I remember you mentioning this once, but never in detail.
So this was maybe 3 years ago. I was applying for a position at an international company, and the interview was fully in English. I had prepared my answers about my experience, my skills, all of that. Felt fine. But then, near the end, the interviewer leaned back and asked, so, what do you like to do outside of work? And I froze completely, because in my head, I had only prepared professional English, not everyday English. Not the kind of English we teach on this very podcast, actually.
That is funny, because it is such a normal, friendly question. It's basically small talk.
Exactly, and that's the whole problem. We often prepare for the big, formal questions and completely forget about the small, everyday ones. So there I was, sitting in this interview, and I said something like, I like read books and also I like walking. Very short, very flat, no personality at all. Afterward, I kept thinking about all the interesting things I could have said. How I love mystery novels, how I go for long walks by the river every Sunday to clear my head, how I recently started learning to cook Italian food. None of that came out in the moment because I had never practiced saying it.
It is strange how these little questions actually reveal so much about a person, and yet they're the ones we prepare the least for.
Completely. And I think that's exactly why today's topic matters so much. There really are around 30 questions that show up constantly in everyday English conversation. Things like, where are you from? What do you do? How long have you been doing that? What do you do in your free time? Do you have any siblings? Are you married? What's your favorite type of food? Have you traveled much? What is your dream job? What do you usually do on weekends? They repeat everywhere. At parties, interviews, on flights next to strangers, at your child's school event.
True story. That happened to me on a flight, actually. I sat next to a man from another country, and within 10 minutes, he had asked me almost half of that list. Where are you flying to? Is this business or pleasure? What do you do? Do you have kids? How long are you staying? And because I had never really practiced casual conversation English, only textbook English, I found myself repeating the same three sentences over and over just to survive the flight.
Which honestly shows something important. Grammar rules alone do not prepare you for real English conversation. What actually prepares you is practicing your own answers to these common, repeating questions until they come out naturally, almost automatically.
That is such a good point, and it connects to something I changed after that meetup experience. A few weeks later, I actually sat down and wrote out short, natural answers to about 20 of these typical questions. Not perfect answers, just honest ones, in my own words. So when someone asked, "What do you do?" I already had a comfortable answer ready. Something like, "I work in IT, mostly fixing network problems for small businesses, and I've been doing it for about 6 years now."
And did that actually help the next time?
It helped enormously. The very next meetup I went to, someone asked me the classic, "So, tell me about yourself." And instead of panicking, I said, "Well, I'm originally from a small town. I moved to the city for work a few years ago. I'm into cycling and photography, and I'm actually trying to improve my English speaking through conversation practice like this." It felt completely different, confident, natural, like a real conversation instead of an exam.
I did something similar eventually, though it took me longer to realize I needed to. After that awkward interview, I started keeping a small notebook, and every time I heard a common, everyday question in English, whether from a show, a podcast, or a real conversation, I wrote it down and practiced my own personal answer out loud, sometimes even in front of the mirror, which sounds silly, but it genuinely worked.
It's not silly at all. I think that's exactly the kind of everyday English practice people underestimate. We focus so much on grammar exercises, but forget that real fluency often comes from being ready for these predictable, repeating questions.
Exactly. And it is not only about job interviews or meetups either. Think about meeting your partner's family for the first time, or talking to a new neighbor, or even just chatting with a cashier who asks, "So, are you visiting or do you live here?" These questions appear constantly in daily English conversation, and once you can answer them smoothly, so much of the pressure just disappears.
Actually, that reminds me of something that happened with my partner's family, which might be an even better example than the meetup. The first time I met her parents, her father sat me down at the dinner table, very kindly but very directly, and started asking questions one after another. What do your parents do? Where did you grow up? What are your future plans for the future? Do you enjoy your job? It felt like 5 different job interviews happening at once, except this time I actually cared about making a good impression, so the pressure was even higher.
Oh, I can imagine that. Meeting a partner's family is a completely different level of nervous because you're not just answering questions, you're being judged a little, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. And what saved me that evening was something small but powerful. Before I even met them, I had already practiced simple, honest answers to the same kinds of family questions. What my parents do, where I'm from, what my future plans look like. So when her father asked, "What are your plans for the future?" instead of freezing, I said, "Right now, I'm focused on growing in my career. And eventually, I would love to travel more and maybe start my own small business one day." Nothing fancy, but it was clear, natural, and it actually started a longer conversation about business, which he loved talking about.
That is a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about today. It's not about giving a perfect textbook answer. It's about having something honest and clear ready so the question becomes an opening instead of a wall.
Completely agree.
And that dinner actually became one of my favorite memories now, not because I performed perfectly, but because for the first time, these common questions did not scare me anymore.
I remember another moment, actually, months after the meetup thing, where I finally felt the difference. I was at a barbecue with some new coworkers, and one of them asked, "So, what do you usually do on weekends?" And instead of my old, short, flat answer, I said, "Honestly, most Saturdays I go cycling in the morning. Then in the afternoon, I usually meet friends for coffee, and Sunday is my slow day. I just cook and relax." He actually laughed and said, "That sounds like a perfect weekend." And suddenly we were talking about cooking for another 5 minutes.
That's the real goal, right? Not just answering the question correctly, but using it as a door into a real conversation. That's genuinely what fluent, everyday English speaking looks like.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of learners believe fluency means knowing complicated grammar or huge vocabulary lists. But honestly, from my own experience, real English fluency often comes down to being comfortable and natural with these common, everyday questions that show up again and again.
I completely agree. And looking back, if I could go back to that interview of yours or my first meetup, I think we'd both tell our younger selves the same thing. Do not panic when someone asks something simple. That simple question is actually your opportunity to practice real, everyday English speaking, not a trap.
And that's really the heart of today's episode. These 30 or so questions aren't obstacles. They're actually one of the best tools for practicing real English conversation because they repeat so often that once you master them, you'll feel prepared almost anywhere. All right, so now let's actually show you how this works in real time. Jack and I are going to ask each other some of these common questions, one after another, and answer them the way we would in a real conversation, naturally, without stopping to think too much. Listen closely because you can copy this style for your own answers.
Perfect. I'll start. Rose, where are you from?
I am originally from a small city near the coast, but I moved here about 5 years ago for work. What about you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a pretty quiet town, actually. Nothing exciting happening there, so I moved to the city as soon as I finished school. So, what do you do for work these days?
I work in marketing, mostly writing content and managing social media for a few different clients. It keeps me busy, but I really enjoy it. And you? How long have you been doing your job?
About 6 years now. I started right after university, and honestly, I fell into it more than planned it. But I have grown to really like it. So tell me, what do you usually do on weekends?
Weekends are sacred to me, honestly. Saturday mornings, I go for a long walk. Then in the afternoon, I usually meet a friend for coffee. Sundays are quieter. I cook something new and just relax before the week starts again. What about you? Same kind of routine?
Not really as relaxed as yours. I usually play football with some friends on Saturday morning, then in the evening, we often watch a game together. Sunday, I try to catch up on chores I ignored all week. Speaking of friends, do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have one younger brother. He's actually studying engineering right now, and we're quite close, even though we live in different cities. Do you have siblings too?
I have two, an older sister and a younger brother. My sister actually lives abroad now, so we mostly talk online, but we try to visit each other once a year. All right, next question. What is your favorite type of food?
That is easy. Anything Italian, honestly. Pasta, pizza, I could eat it every single day and never get bored. What about you?
I would say Asian food, especially Thai or Japanese. I love how fresh everything tastes. Okay, here's a bigger one. Have you traveled much?
A fair amount, actually. I've visited maybe 10 different countries, mostly in Europe. But last year, I finally went to Southeast Asia, which was an amazing experience. Have you traveled a lot too?
Not as much as I would like, honestly. I've been to a few countries nearby, but my dream is to travel much further one day, maybe South America or Japan. Speaking of dreams, what is your dream job, if you could choose anything?
Honestly, I would love to run my own small business someday. Maybe something creative, like a design studio. What about you? What is your dream job?
I think I would love to work as a photographer full time, traveling and taking pictures for magazines or websites. It feels far from my current job, but who knows, maybe one day. All right, one more. Are you a morning person or a night person?
Definitely a morning person. I get most of my energy early in the day. And you?
I am completely the opposite. My brain does not really wake up until the afternoon. Okay, last one from me. What is something you're really proud of?
I think finishing my degree while working part-time at the same moment. It was exhausting, but I'm proud I did not give up. What about you?
For me, it's probably learning to speak English confidently, honestly. It took years, a lot of mistakes, but now here we are, making a podcast about it, which still feels a little unbelievable sometimes.
See, and that's exactly it, listeners. Notice how none of our answers were long speeches. They were short, honest, personal, and each one naturally led to another question. That's real, everyday English conversation. All right, now let's slow down and look closely at some of the expressions we use naturally during our conversation today, because these are extremely useful for your own everyday English speaking.
First one, to fall into something. I said, I fell into it more than planned it, talking about my job. This means something happened without a clear plan, almost by accident. For example, she did not study acting, she just fell into a career in film. A common mistake learners make is saying, I fell in this job, but the correct form is always needs on, catch up on something.
Next, sacred, which I used when I said weekends are sacred to me. It usually means religious, but in everyday English, it also means something extremely important and protected. For example, family dinner time is sacred in our house. Nobody interrupts it.
Good one. Next, to catch up on something, which I used about chores. It means to do something you did not have time for earlier. For example, this weekend I need to catch up on emails I ignored all week. A common mistake is saying catch up my emails, but the correct form is always needs on, catch up on something.
Next, quite close, which I used about my brother. It simply means very close, emotionally. For example, my grandmother and I are quite close. We talk almost every day. A more natural alternative some speakers use is really close or very close.
Next, to keep someone busy, which you used about your job. It means something takes a lot of your time and energy. For example, taking care of 2 kids really keeps her busy these days.
Great one. Next, honestly, which we both used many times as a small filler word. It softens a sentence and makes it sound more natural and personal. For example, honestly, I was terrified before the interview. Learners often forget filler words like this, but native speakers use them constantly to sound relaxed.
Next, to be into something, which I used about photography and cycling earlier in the story part. It means you like or enjoy something regularly. For example, she is really into hiking lately. A common mistake is saying, I am interesting into photography, but the correct form is, I am into photography or I am interested in photography.
Excellent point. That mix-up happens constantly. Next, to feel prepared, which connects to today's whole topic. It means feeling ready and confident. For example, after practicing, I finally felt prepared for the interview.
And finally, an opening instead of a wall, which is more of an image we created earlier in our story. We used it to describe how a question can either block conversation or start it. It is not a fixed expression, but it is a lovely way to think about conversation. Questions as doors, not obstacles.
Now let's quickly go through some common mistakes B1 learners often make with these everyday questions.
First one, incorrect. I am agree with you. Correct. I agree with you. Agree is a verb by itself in English. It does not need am before it.
Second, incorrect. What do you do in your free times? Correct. What do you do in your free time? Free time is uncountable here, so we never add an S.
Third, incorrect. I have 6 years old. Correct. I am 6 years old. Or better, I am 6 years old. Or I am in my 30s for adults. Learners often copy this pattern directly from their own language, but in English we use am, not have with age.
Fourth, incorrect. I very like pizza. Correct. I really like pizza, or I like pizza very much. Very cannot go directly before like, it needs really instead, or very much at the end.
And finally, incorrect. What is your work? Correct. What do you do? Or what is your job? Work is more often used as a verb or general idea, while job or what do you do sounds much more natural for this specific question.
All right, now it's your turn to practice. In the comments below, we want you to answer at least 3 of the questions we used today in English, just like we did. Tell us where you're from, what you do, and what your dream job would be. Or choose any 3 questions you liked most from our conversation.
Do not worry about writing something perfect. Just write it the way you would say it out loud. Naturally, honestly, even if it's short. This is real English practice, everyday English conversation happening right there in the comment section.
We genuinely read these, and it's one of our favorite parts of making this English podcast for beginners and intermediate learners, seeing your real answers and your progress day by day.
Thank you, friends, for listening to today's episode. I hope you learned something from it. And more than that, I hope you feel a little more confident the next time someone asks you one of these everyday questions in English. Remember, these questions are not tests. They're simply doors into real conversations. And now you have some honest, natural answers ready.
Do not miss tomorrow's episode, day 29 of our 30-day B1 to B2 challenge. We have another topic coming that will help your English speaking and listening practice even more. Subscribe now so you don't fall behind on this challenge.
See you tomorrow, friends. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and we'll talk again very soon.